Thank you all for joining us. Good afternoon. And I'm Edith Juguna. I'm the director of the Success Network. Really excited about today's webinar on best practices for transfer partnerships, because we know this is a topic on the minds of many people, especially in the higher education space. And we're fortunate to have a group of speakers with deep expertise on this topic, and I'll let them introduce themselves shortly. Please note that we are recording the session, and both the recording and the presentation will be available to attendees. So now I'll kick it over to you, Dena.
All right, thank you, Edith. So we'll do our introductions in just a moment, but I'm thrilled to be joined today by Agnes Szemborski, Sean Warren Crouch, Holly Pflum, and Kristin Smigielski. We are going to introduce ourselves, as I mentioned, then we're going to give you a little bit of an overview of the sort of transfer landscape in the state of Illinois, and then jump right into discussions between these institutions that have come today to talk about their partnerships and what they're doing in terms of best practices to serve our transfer students. I know that there are a lot of what we call dyads partnerships, and many of you are on the call today. I saw, I couldn't begin to name all the wonderful colleagues that I saw in there, but we are leaving a great, enough time at the end to also hear from you about things that you're doing, because I know Northern and Northeastern and Governor State and ISU and UIS and UIC, a lot of people on this call, so who have fantastic partnerships in place as well. So let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. I'll start. My name is Dena Lawrence, and I'm the Senior Project Coordinator on a project called Illinois MyCreditsTransfer. It's funded primarily by the Illinois Board of Higher Ed and receives a great deal of strong support from the University of Illinois system. On that project, I'm joined by my co-coordinator, Gina Modica, and just to kind of give you, I think the thing to think about with MyCreditsTransfer, we help institutions make the most of this, the transfer advising tool that the state pays for. And so I think many of you would know or recognize that availability of reliable transfer advising as early as possible in that student's transfer journey has long been recognized for its significant positive impact. So that's kind of what we do to help the state with transfer. Agnes, you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. My name is Agnes Szemborski, and I am the Assistant Vice Chancellor for External Relations at Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. And I always joke that's a lot of fancy sounding words for meaning that I manage the Chicagoland territory. So I have a team of recruiters. And because Southern is at the very tip of our state, we need a presence in Chicagoland because we know that's where the students are. And so that is part of my duties. I work with community colleges. I also work with high schools and as well as community organizations. Glad to be here.
Thank you, Agnes. And at your former home, let's hear from Sean at Harper College.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sean Warren Crouch. I am the Director of College Transitions at Harper College. So I've been in this role for about a year now, but I've been with Harper for 6 years. Our Director of College Transition is a new position. I help students transition into Harper through a large scholarship program that we offer called the Harper Promise Scholarship. But then I also help students to transfer out to our partner institutions. So I manage our transfer partnerships. And then the program that we'll discuss a little bit further today is going to be our University Center.
Thank you, Sean. And Holly, would you like to go next?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Holly Pflum. I am the Assistant Director for Transfer Outreach and Initiatives with the University of Illinois System Office. I have been in this role for a couple years now and previously served on the transfer recruitment and admissions side at U of I Urbana-Champaign, as well as an academic advisor at a couple other public institutions in the state of Illinois. But within my current role, I basically have anything that has to do with transfer students and initiatives across all three of our universities. I work with all three of our universities on those types of outreach initiatives, and also with many of the great people on the call here today from community colleges across the state of Illinois.
Thank you, Holly. And last but definitely not least, our colleague Kristin.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kristin Smigielski. I'm the Dean of Enrollment Management at Parkland College. Part of being in that role, I oversee admissions and records, financial aid, and our assessment center. But I'm also heavily involved with transfer agreements and partnerships as well. I've been at Parkland for 6 years. Prior to that, I was at the U of I serving in a transfer role capacity. So happy to have everybody here and excited to share information.
Thank you. So as Edith said, we've got quite a breadth and depth of experience among us, but we know that and recognize that you do as well. So again, I want to, point out that we've saved time for discussion. So keep your thinking caps on, and to use a very old expression, I don't know if anyone says that anymore. And, as we talk about some of the best practices in transfer partnerships, please be ready to share some things you're doing. So for that overview of the state's higher ed landscape, most of us on the call, at least from the higher ed sector, probably know this, but there are also people on the call who are from K-12 or other organizations that are interested in higher education. And so just to briefly, we have 12 public universities, 48 public community colleges, more than 80 independent not-for-profit universities and colleges operating in Illinois, and 10 independent for-profit. In addition to that, in the Chicago area primarily, but with state authority from IBHE, there are over 35, last I counted, I probably should have double-checked that, it changes frequently, out-of-state institutions that have operating authority here in Illinois. The aforementioned 150 or so institutions are all headquartered here, right? So these are institutions that also have operating authority, and over 60 of those alone are in the Chicago area. And so that's obviously a very densely populated area, and as Agnes said, where our students are. In the great majority. That's not at all discounting the rest of the state. So looking at students, our student enrollment by sector is highest among the community colleges. As you can see there, over 230,000 students in the community colleges. And the other thing worth noting is that because of the community college structure and the pricing and open enrollment, you have a much larger base of underrepresented and minority students, first gens, students who are Pell eligible, all across the board in terms of age and experience, veterans. The breadth and depth of diversity of our students is highly represented in the community colleges. So, that's an important piece to recognize. And as you can see here, these stats came from IBHE's enrollment database. And so, or it's a data tool, I should say, and I obtained them a couple of months ago. The time, 22 was the last available. To be honest, I did not check back to see if 23 data is available yet, but I can tell you from years of experience that it's still going to be the highest enrollment among our community colleges. It's been that way for a very long time. So a great deal of our students are being served by our wonderful community colleges. And then I think the other thing that I kind of want to, address the elephant in the room whenever we talk about transfer, probably everybody on this call has heard these sort of dire statistics. And I'm not saying they're not dire. I don't mean that flippantly, but they're national statistics, and they're not quite as dire in Illinois as they are in the national averages, but you're constantly hearing that, 80% of students want to transfer and only 33% do. And within 6 years, only 48% of those earn a bachelor's. And obviously the most at risk are the students that we just talked about, the student population at the community colleges. And the barriers to transfer have been researched and examined and, over and over again. And they pretty much boil down to, again, nationally, I'm very proud of what we're doing in Illinois, and we'll get to that next. But nationally, they boil down to transferability of academic credit and how that credit applies to degree programs, how transfer students typically make slower progress toward a degree. They're more likely to be balancing family and work obligations with their school, less likely to be full-time students in the community college experience. And cost, all kinds of costs. They may be, very comfortable with the cost at the community college, but actually making that jump to a 4-year can require sometimes them to take on additional debt. It's opportunity costs in terms of the time to degree, all sorts of fees and application fees, transcript fees. They may have to clear debt at a former institution in order to be send all the documents to be admissible to another institution. They may have less financial aid or scholarships available depending upon, their household income. And transfer shock, which is something that, everyone's heard about. It basically revolves around social belonging and being able to adapt to institutional processes. So those are the challenges, and they're significant, and we all recognize that. But in Illinois, we have a far better outcome than the national average. In fact, Illinois leads the United States. We are number one in the bachelor degree completion of community college transfer students. And that's, I like to put this little note that is not a fluke. Illinois they don't always publish state level data, and they only do once every several years. And the last time they published state level data, we were number one. And the time before that, we were number 3. I've been tracking this for a very long time and doing presentations about it. So this is due to the hard work of all of our institutions and also some structural supports that we have put into place in Illinois. But we're here to focus on the institutions and the work that they do today. So I would say, again, I've got the source here. It's a report called Tracking Transfer from the National Student Clearinghouse Research Center in conjunction with the Community College Research Center. A little later in the slide, we'll have resources for you that have those links and so forth. But where we have the greatest opportunity for improvement in Illinois, and where we really still need improvement and are not number one, although we're still in the top 3, is to increase the number of students who make that jump from the 2-year to the 4-year. And I should also, just as a disclaimer, say there's lots and lots of kinds of transfer, patterns of transfer that we see in the industry. What we're talking about here today is primarily what we refer to as vertical transfer, or some of you might think of it as traditional transfer from a 2-year to a 4-year, because it's easier to adapt patterns and processes and for those students. So the number of community college students could stand to come up quite a lot. And to that end, more guided pathways have been recognized as a need, continued building and strengthening of transfer partnerships, and increasing advising resources to students. I mentioned earlier that advising resources are highly recognized as a critical piece of student success. And then also, because of those cost issues, increased transfer scholarships or promoting existing financial aid. So those are some of our areas that we've identified for improvement. And of course, those all fold deeply into what we're talking about today with transfer partnerships. So we're going to start. Harper and SIU Carbondale have some great partnerships. And so we'll start with Agnes and Sean, and then have a little bit of a discussion, and then we'll move to Holly and Kristin. Whoopsie. So Sean, would you like to start out by telling us, in what ways has Harper responded to transfer demands, the transfer demands of your students? We talked about some of the demands they have. How have you responded to those?
That is a great question, Dena. It's almost like we planned you to ask that question. So Agnes and I are going to talk about our first partnership that does address our transfer student needs, and we call it the University Center at Harper College. So back in 2018, Harper began creating the University Center to address those exact concerns from our transfer students. Our past president, Dr. Ken Ender, recognized the need and desire for our students to earn a bachelor's degree by staying closer to home. Many of the students that we have are unable to travel far distances and need to stay closer to home due to family constraints, but they may not be comfortable with immersing themselves in an entirely online bachelor's degree completion program. Thus, the idea of the University Center came about. Yes?
Do me a favor. Give me a cue when you want me to advance the slides.
Will do. Will do.
Thank you.
So that's how the University Center came about. Our University Center partners with 4 of our top transfer institutions and allows these schools to bring their faculty, their curriculum, and their degrees right to Harper's campus for our students to complete their bachelor's degree. Most of the students that pursue our University Center will start out at Harper and earn their traditional associate's degree, and then we provide them a seamless transfer to our partner institution programs that are offered right here on Harper's campus. Our partner schools will bring their admissions, their advising, and any additional resources needed to ensure that our students have success. We even dedicate office space for our partner institutions that they can use however they'd like, whether that's for admissions appointments or financial aid assistance, or even their faculty, once they're a part of the program, will use them for their office hours. When students enroll through the University Center, they are considered students of these partner institutions, but they never have to leave Harper. Heck, the first time that they could set foot on their partner campus could be at graduation, because these students are earning the exact same degree that a student that went to that school for all 4 years are earning. Next slide, please. So we currently partner with 4 different schools, and I think I saw a couple of people that I work with these other partner schools in this presentation. So I'm excited to see all of them there. We partner with DePaul University. I saw Rodrigo and Kristin from Northern Illinois University are here. They're our partners for Northern. With Roosevelt, I know I saw Erica and Seth were there, so thanks for joining us. But then today I'm also here joined with Agnes from Southern Illinois University. Now, each of these schools are in the top 10 transfer schools for Harper students. So we have really strong connections with each of them already for their traditional transfer programs. All of our partners together are able to offer 12 different bachelor's degrees and even a master's degree for students to complete on Harper's campus through the University Center. Now, our rule with this program is that at least 50% of the school's program must be taught in a face-to-face format, but up to 50% of the program can be taught online. This does provide flexibility for the programs that are being offered. For example, a school may offer a variety of elective courses, but they might not be able to get those elective courses here on our campus. So as long as they're able to teach that online, they're still able to offer that course for our students that are here at our University Center. But again, they're never having to travel to those other partner schools. Now, another important piece of the University Center model is that our schools have a non-competing clause. And what that means is these schools are not going to offer the same bachelor's degree through our University Center. And that's had some really unintended benefits. It gives the schools an opportunity to work together and work collaboratively to increase enrollments through our center. Each semester, we get all of our partners together in a room and we discuss what can be approved upon within the constraints of the University Center. And that really allows for us to be collaborative and make sure that all our schools are represented and make sure that we can increase enrollments for all of the different schools. The students that are in the pipeline and express interest in a specific academic program, they go directly to the schools that offer that academic program. So again, that non-competing clause is a very important piece of the University Center to allow everybody to work collaboratively. Now, one of the biggest concerns that we often hear from transfer students is the financial aspect of earning that bachelor's degree. Often the cost is out of reach for students and they cannot continue. But the University Center takes a big piece of the finances out of the picture, and that's the housing piece. Students can still receive a high-quality education from these 4 institutions, but they don't have to worry about finding housing or living in a dorm or meal plans or even parking costs. They can do all of that right here on Harper's campus while living at home. And this is a huge plus for many of our students. Now, another financial benefit is that the private institutions that we partner with, they actually will automatically discount their tuition for students that are participating in the University Center program. The goal was to make their tuition competitive with our in-state public institutions, so they offer a discount of up to 35% off of their posted tuition rates for our University Center students. So that is a huge financial benefits for the students that are pursuing those programs. Now, our University Center has shown some great successes over the years. We have seen over 900 students enroll through the University Center since we began in 2019. We continue to see increases in enrollment year over year, and we have needed to even increase the classroom locations that we dedicate to the University Center program because of the increased demand. We're actually building a new building on campus, a new student center on campus, and the University Center is going to get to take over the entire top floor. I'm really looking forward to that once that does get built. It'll give us a chance to expand a little bit and also have more of a space for our partner institutions. We are proud to announce that 266 students so far have earned their bachelor's degree through our University Center program. And we're excited that after next semester, we'll be able to include our master's degree completers because we have a couple that are in the pipeline to complete their master's degree this academic year. And one really awesome statistic about our courses is our course success rate. Students are completing their courses with a C or better at a rate of 92%. So we're very excited to see those numbers for our students. And a lot of that has to do with their comfort level by remaining here at Harper, but continuing their studies through these schools. Students have access to many benefits that are used here at Harper. And with the familiarity of the campus, they're not afraid to access these benefits. Students can utilize Harper's Academic Support Center for much of their coursework. And additionally, the collaboration between our Access and Disability Services Office and the Partner School Services have students, let them feel really comfortable with reaching out to address their needs and provide that seamless transition for our students. So here on the community college side of things, we love our partner with our university centers, but don't let me do all the talking. I'd like to now pass it over to Agnes to talk about the SIU partnership and some of the unintended benefits that have grown from the University Center partnership.
All right. Thank you, Sean. That was fantastic. I feel like I could just put the slide up and leave. Sean did it all. But just to give you, and I think most people, I like Dena, I saw so many familiar names. So glad to see so many blasts from the past. But just to give you a little bit of background, in case you are not familiar with SIU, we're right now right under 12,000 students in our enrollment. We are obviously a regional university, but in January 2025, I'd be remiss not to mention it, we are becoming an R1. So research is a big part of what we do. But again, because of where we're located in the state, we are kind of geographically bound to the Southern Illinois region. And so again, for anyone not familiar with Southern Illinois, we're about 5 to 6 hours, almost 7, depending on where you are in Chicagoland, from the very top near Wisconsin to a little bit lower in. So about a good 5 to 6 hours. So the University Center, the partnership that we have with Harper, has enabled students that would really never consider coming. We know, again, as we've mentioned, as Dena's mentioned, the challenges for many students who are place-bound, who can't leave the Chicagoland area, whether they're working, whether they're supporting their families, have other obligations. They just can't leave. They have to stay where they're at. And so partnering with Harper has allowed us to bring students our programs. As Sean mentioned, the programs are taught by our faculty. It's our curriculum. They become our students. And so doing this with Harper has allowed us to come in and teach. Right now, we're teaching 2 programs. We were the last partner to join the University Center. And right now, we have 2 programs. We are looking to hope to expand that. But we are teaching accounting and public safety management at Harper. Both programs have been successful and again have been able to reach students that have normally, would have not considered SIU. Unlike the other 3 partners, we are not commutable. So sometimes, students can choose to commute to NIU or to Roosevelt or to DePaul. again, incurring those costs of commuting and parking and all those other things. But there's no way to commute to SIU from the Chicagoland area. So again, it enables us to reach students that would have never considered our university. And as Sean mentioned, it has given us some additional benefits. So next, please, Dena.
Oops.
So a couple things, as we've, again, been partnered with Harper, we've noticed some really interesting things that have started happening. So again, when you think of SIU, because of where we're located in the state, our top 5, top 10 feeders are schools located within our geographic region. So we draw from Southern Illinois, a little bit from Central. Because of this partnership, Harper is now in our top 5. In fact, they're the only non-Southern community college that is in our top 5 because of this partnership, obviously. So it has really we've seen our numbers from Harper grow. The most interesting thing that Sean and I talk about all the time is we've not only seen obviously numbers at the University Center grow, but we have seen students who've come to Carbondale, right? Which is an interesting byproduct, as Harper does a fantastic job of marketing the University Center to the community. So it is, kind of on everybody's lips. Everyone in the area knows about it. They market the University Center. It goes out into all the mailings that they send to their community. And so just as a byproduct, folks in the Chicagoland area who, again, may have never considered SIU are hearing about SIU. The other wonderful benefit of being at the University Center is that all the University Center partners have an office at Harper. So we get to have an office. We can, our advisors can be in there to meet with students. We, of course, can have admissions representatives be in there. The faculty that teach at Harper use these offices. And so, again, that word of mouth, people who would have never considered SIU, who didn't really ever know anything about us, are now hearing about us on a regular basis and are becoming more familiar with our university. So our numbers from Harper have really grown tremendously, including, again, students who choose to come to Carbondale. As a result, we've done a lot of fun and new things with Harper. We had our first SIU day. So we kind of took over Harper. We invited a lot of folks from Carbondale. We all came out. We had admissions, doing on-site admissions that day. We had representatives from financial aid talking to students about their aid. We had some departments present. So it's just a fun way to engage with Harper students. And again, Harper advertised it for us. So we were able to kind of, again, take over. We brought all our stuff. We had all our swag. So it was kind of a takeover of Harper. We put maroon everywhere. So that was a really fun thing, and we're going to definitely look to do it again. The University Center holds University Center transfer fairs that, again, are specifically for the 4 partners. So we get a lot of exposure that, again, other partners that, are just, doing transfer, whether it be agreements or transfer guides, they don't get the exact same kind of exposure that the partners do. So it's a really nice benefit. We, of course, also have the Saluki Step Ahead program, which for the students who, maybe they're just so busy with work and other things, they can't physically come to the University Center. We do allow students to complete fully online. Again, it's not through the University Center. The Saluki Step Ahead program is a full online program. But again, because of our relationship with Harper and all of the things we've done with them, students are getting exposed to that program as well. So again, the numbers just by a byproduct have risen in the Saluki Step Ahead program as well. And then we're so happy that we had our first graduate, which again, it seems like one, okay, that's not big, but it is a big deal because he was the first. So he's graduated, and then we have May. So we are, like Sean mentioned, so many students have come through the University Center, and now we're seeing the fruits of that labor in these students graduating, completing their bachelor's degree. We, of course, invite them to come and walk the stage down in Carbondale, but we do also offer a ceremony in the Chicagoland area as well. So if a student, again, just totally place-bound, cannot come even for that ceremony, we do want to celebrate them up here. So we will be doing that as well. So just a very cool partnership that has allowed both of our institutions to try new things, grow in new ways, and really get students to come that, again, wouldn't have ever considered because of the distance and because of things going on in their life and the challenges that they face. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And so it's super clear, how the university center relationship does help tackle some of those barriers that we talked about, cost and, location, place-bound, all those other things. So thank you so much for that. So turning to our other dyad, as we call them, Kristin and Holly, outside of traditional, Agnes mentioned sort of traditional relationships in community colleges that are co-located near a four-year. Outside of those traditional 2+2s or articulation agreements, how has Parkland and the U of I system worked to strengthen your partnership and in terms of keeping the best interest of students at the forefront of the processes?
Great question, Dena. One we ponder all the time, right? So, so it's, I think in some way, shape, or form, there's all sorts of articulation agreements, pathway agreements, guaranteed admission, the list goes on and on and on. But I think it's, addressing those barriers for students, how to really think outside the box and how we can really get students from point A at the community college to point B at the four-year, making it hopefully as easy and as seamless as possible. Not that the students don't have to do the hard work and take the right classes and get good grades and those types of things, but really arming them with the information up front is a really critical piece. And then again, just thinking about any sort of process barriers you might have in place and how to just make that easier. Why do we do things that certain way? And do we have to keep doing it, or can we make changes along the way? So I'll start and kind of give a brief overview about Parkland, and then I'll hand it over to Holly, and then we'll sort of tag team our partnerships that we have. But Parkland, so if you don't know, we're in East Central Illinois, located about 10 minutes from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign's campus. We serve 29 high schools in 12 different counties. So that's an interesting thing for us because, we have some high schools that are very large, some that are really small and rural, all with different offerings. It's not one big central system like a lot of community colleges have with the high schools in their district. And then about 23% of our high school district graduates attend Parkland, right, like the fall after high school graduation. That used to be about 25% pretty consistently. We've been as high as about 28%. We'd like to see that increase to about 30%. So that's in our goals. But right now we're sitting at about 23%. So thinking about how to best serve those students when they come to Parkland straight out of high school and what information we can give them at that time. Our annual credit student headcount is about 9,000 overall. We do have a lot of students that are coming to us as non-degree students that might switch to degree seeking later on, a little unsure maybe of what their goals are right away, and that's fine because we want them to take some time to explore. We offer over 100 programs of study. And then the last bullet point about 32% of credential-seeking students do transfer to a four-year after coming to Parkland. I think that fits in with that stat that Dena had earlier in the presentation. And actually, I didn't put this on there, but although really self-reported and kind of take it for what it's worth, but when students apply to Parkland, we have a question on there that asks them to say what their intent is. Why are they coming to Parkland? And the percentage of students that say to transfer to a four-year is well over about 60%. So it's much higher than that. So we see, even just here, we see that disconnect of at some point that student's goal was to transfer, but then seeing how many, actually do transfer. And plans can change, and certainly maybe that comes later on. We understand that, but I think that's pretty consistent from what the data showed a little bit earlier in the presentation. So, all right, I'll hand it over to Holly at this point.
Great, thank you. Yeah, similarly, I wanted to kind of just give an overview of the U of I system for a little context behind what I'll talk about next, which is some of the data for Parkland students transferring into our 3 universities. So you can see here some facts for all 3 of our universities based out of Urbana-Champaign, Chicago, and Springfield. And I saw I have some colleagues on the call from all 3 of these institutions, so glad to have you too. Just wanted to show you kind of a cultural, not only where they started, where they're at right now, what their classroom sizes look like, things like that, but really calling attention to the transfer student numbers here on the slide. So specifically in the fall semester, we range anywhere from 400 to 2,000 new transfer students at each one of our institutions. So incoming transfers do have a decent sized cohort to experience that journey alongside. Go ahead and advance the slide there. Thank you, Dena. On this slide, I wanted to really talk more about our relationship with Parkland. And again, this is referencing U of I system data. So it includes all 3 of our universities. It's not disaggregated by the university location. Looking at the right hand of the screen, the bar chart on the right side, you can see the number of applicants, admitted and enrolled students that we receive from Parkland on an annual basis. This was from fall 23. And spring 24, we have 2 application periods like many of you for transfer students specifically. So the biggest bar chart in the back there was the number of applicants, and then the blue is the number of admitted, and gray is the number of enrolled students that we receive. And then calling attention to the number of admitted and enrolled students that we receive, you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen how our transfer students yield at much higher percentages than first years who are applying to college for the first time into the U of I system. And I'm sure that doesn't come to much surprise for many of you all here on the call today, but transfers yield well. Once they're admitted, they tend to enroll at that particular institution because they've been working toward that plan the past few or couple years while they were working on that at the community college level. So specifically from Parkland, our students yield at higher percentages than what they do for other community colleges, as you can see, 87.4%. And in comparison to our first years, that's only about 25.7%. So it's obviously for many reasons, as we've cited here, and we all work with transfer students day in and day out. Obviously, it's a great population to focus on, but they're a very intentional population, and it's definitely to our benefit to work with these students earlier in the process. A little bit more information here on the demographics of fall 23 Parkland transfer students into the U of I. About 20% were first generation, 19% identified as underrepresented, and then average age of enrolled students there on the bottom left-hand side. So UIUC 23, and then UIS and UIC a little closer to the 26-year-old timeframe when they were enrolling in our institutions. And then on the right-hand side is a list of top 11. Obviously, 11 is kind of an odd number to pull from, but it really tapers off after that. So on the left side of that chart, you'll see the number of applications that we receive, and then the top 11 majors by those who enroll. So the top psychology is at the top of the list for both of those areas, but you'll see a lot of ag, leadership, and communication programs. That's more so characteristic of the UIUC relationship specifically, but on the bottom half of the chart, you'll see more of UIS and UIC shining in those numbers. You can advance. Thank you. So now Kristin and I wanted to just talk about our DIAN and some of the great things that are happening between Parkland College and UIUC, UIC, and UIS. And I'll turn it over to Kristin to talk about Parkland Pathway first.
Sure. Okay. Well, thanks. So Parkland Pathway is, I think we can call it a longstanding program now. It's been in place for about 16 years. So I feel like in higher ed years, that's longstanding, right, by now. But I initiated it in 2008 as part of a Lumina Foundation grant that we had. And it was just this. It was strengthening partnerships, reducing barriers, helping students take the guesswork out of transfer, and logical partnership here. You know, like I mentioned in my intro, that we're not too far from each other. So the program made sense to go with a dual enrollment program. And this is just a quick note. This is a program with the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign's campus. And it was, so students they apply to it while they're in high school, their senior year. And then, so there is an admission process to get into Parkland Pathway, but if accepted, they come to Parkland for their first 2 years as their primary institution, but then they can take a class at the University of Illinois on campus, say up to 5 credit hours. So it just kind of depends on what the student's interests are, what their comfort level is, whether that ends up being 1 or 2 classes. But that helps with, you know, and again, in the beginning, we were talking about some of those ways to reduce barriers, and transfer shock is huge. And transfer shock was really the premise of Parkland Pathway, is when students get to campus, when they get to their 4-year, just having that moment of, you know, my class sizes might be larger. Everybody else, a lot of other people have been here since they were a first-year student. How do I fit in or get into the mix, and getting involved and staying active? You know, a lot of times students are thinking, I had it down at my community college, but then now I'm switching environments and things have changed. So by reducing that, getting students on campus, getting them used to just finding their way around, to become familiar with buildings. We also do allow students to, they can join clubs and organizations on campus, they can live on campus. And then the personalized advising has really been key in not only the student experience, firsthand hearing from their Parkland advisor, who is co-advising with their University of Illinois college advisor, because they can make sure they're taking, again, the appropriate coursework while at Parkland. They have a grade point average in mind that they know they have to meet to be successful in transferring. But it's also been a really cool thing to see Parkland and U of I learn about each other's processes. And I mean, anything from coursework offerings to student experience to like the academic calendar. I mean, I kind of, after all these years, we still sometimes get into this like confusion about starting, and we don't line up perfectly when it comes to the calendar. So working through all of that, and then you kind of do have to sit back and laugh, because if as higher ed professionals, we're confused about it, think about what the students are going through too. So going through that together, I think is really beneficial, learning from one another. But then it's like, okay, how do we even explain this to students? They're navigating 2 institutions, 2 different email addresses, and all sorts of things. But we have orientations in place, and making sure students are just well aware of the nuts and bolts of the program. Being really upfront with the information about the program, I think, has been critical. So making sure that we're actively talking about this program when recruiting in high schools. I know our Parkland staff, when they go out and do visits, they always talk about coming to Parkland and pursuing just traditional transfer to any school, but also then specifically Parkland Pathway as an added option. And one other thing I want to note is that it's an option. It's not the only way to get to U of I's campus. And I think a lot of times people think this is the only way to transfer, and that's definitely not the case. But yeah, so upon successful completion of their courses at Parkland and their GPA, then students are guaranteed admission to that college at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. So we've been able to sort of just help students figure it out for them. And then they're able to establish friendships and maintain those across town as well. So we, like I said, we continue to communicate, learn, and grow from one another. But we're proud to say that the program has been working quite well, and we'll see where it continues from here. So, Holly, do you want to talk about the data sharing agreement?
Sure. Thank you, Kristin. So hot off the press, and I will actually drop a link because it was just published back in at the end of September. We have been working with Parkland on a project. It initially started as a project that we were a part of in a national organization called NASH. We started on this project and it eventually just merged into a formal MOU that both institutions, well, I would say technically 4 institutions, all 3 of ours in the University of Illinois system with Parkland College signed. But essentially it's a data sharing agreement. And I know we've talked a lot about different challenges that transfer students face, and you all see this day to day again. This one is to identify students sooner in their transfer journeys. So through this national project, we were having conversations with Kristin and our 3 transfer coordinators and recruiters at all 3 universities. We're having conversations about how do we identify students sooner when they're ready to transfer, or they've identified a transfer destination of interest or a transfer major. How do we work with them sooner in the process? So what we did was essentially test. We worked with Kristin. They graciously and generously added a field on their admissions application that allowed students to identify if they were planning to transfer, and if so, to identify some potential destinations of interest after they were done with their time at Parkland College. So once a student did that and opted in, then Parkland sends us a list monthly of students who have identified any of our 3 institutions within the system as a potential destination of interest. And that's, again, starting their first semester of admission at Parkland College. So they're, just now starting to enroll in the coursework that they need to complete their degree at Parkland while working on some of those transfer requirements. So it allows our transfer recruiters in our universities to get ahead and to do some really strategic one-on-one transfer advising with them in coordination with the academic advisors at Parkland College as well. So this has been a really great thing. It's something that we continue to evaluate with time. We're looking at data. We want to make sure that they are completing their requirements at Parkland before they transfer over. We don't want them to necessarily transfer early. We want them to work with us, and that MOU just formalize the relationship of working together and strengthening the pipeline between Parkland, UIC, UIS, and UIUC. So it's been a really great thing. We're excited to continue expanding this and to work with Parkland and look through and scour through the data and make sure that we're getting the information in the transfer students' hands as soon as they possibly can to support them along that journey. So, and then the last thing I'll add that I didn't put on the slide here, another partnership that we've been working on with Parkland and some other community colleges and high schools in the district, and also outside of Parkland's district, is transfer exploration nights. And that's, again, to reach students sooner in their preparation for transfer by identifying high school juniors and seniors who are considering enrolling at their local community college, and really just providing them the resources and the tools, one night event, inviting them and their families or guests to learn about what transfer looks like. What does it mean to start at a community college, and what do I need to know to be successful to transfer into a 4-year university later on down the road? So really trying to promote the resources we have available, like IAI, MyCreditsTransfer, Transferology, things like that will support them. So that's another initiative that we've done with Parkland now twice in the past just over a year. that seems to be growing in excitement and interest among students. So we're excited to continue that with Parkland as well.
Okay, so oops, get my microphone back down here. So we've talked about some really unique approaches, and as I mentioned at the beginning, we definitely want to hear from you all. There are, you know, a plethora of our four-year universities and community colleges on this call, which is fantastic. These are the resources that I mentioned earlier, and I can drop them in the chat real quick. This is that tracking. Oops. I have to, I'm going to have to shake it out of this view in order to copy it. So while we discuss, I'll do that. But we'll put those links into the dashboard. And of course, you know, our email addresses are there as well. But we want to hear from you all, like what, and it doesn't have to be solutions. It could be challenges. If you want to talk about challenges and or any new efforts that you have going on. I'm going to stop sharing so that I can see this full screen. And if you want, you can even like just raise your hand. And although it's 5 pages long on my laptop, so I might not be the best way to go, but you can certainly unmute and talk or put something in the chat. Or I'll scroll through and so will my colleagues. So if you raise your hand, somebody hopefully will spot it. And fair warning, a lot of you know me. If you don't ask questions, I'll ask you some.
Hi, I have a question. My name is Marissa. I'm from University of Illinois, Chicago. And
hi, Marissa.
Hello. My question is for the students that have successfully transferred to another college or university from their home institution. How often do you all keep in touch with those students? I guess it's a two-part question. How often do you all keep in touch with those students, and what feedback do you hear from those students within their transition?
Guys, I'm going to leave that to the dyads. Who wants to tackle that first?
You mean from the community college? So they transfer from the community college to a 4-year. The community college stays in touch, or what they hear?
I'm sorry, my headphone went out for a second. Would you mind repeating that?
Do you mean like if a student transfers from a community college to a 4-year, what does the community college still reach out or stay in touch, or what do they hear from the student?
Yeah, if they touch bases with the student, see how their transition is going, you know, if it's been a smooth transition, stuff like that.
No, that's a great question. I mean, purely anecdotal, we do have a lot of students that will come back and visit and tell us how it's going. And I mean, overall, positive. They're thankful for the advising support that they received. We do, one thing I didn't mention is we have an advising model, like cohort advising. So advisors are assigned to a caseload of students. So the idea is they're seeing the same students, and it's based on their area of interest. But I think that's been really helpful and with transfer too, because you establish a relationship with the advisor. They kind of get to know what your goals are. And then semester to semester, they're continuously having that conversation as opposed to having to start over. And, you know, the student doesn't have to revisit what their goals are. It just can be a continued conversation. I will say from like a marketing perspective, we do continue to reach out to our students, particularly for summer enrollment opportunities. Since a lot of our summer enrollment, they are 4-year students needing an extra class or two. So we do a marketing campaign to let them know that they can still come back and take summer classes here or even online.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for that. I was definitely curious to know like what the students' experience is once they do successfully transition, because that's the hope and the goal for all of our students. So love to hear that those efforts are still being upkept. Thank you.
Yeah. There's also a great question from Rebecca in the chat, and I'll just read it aloud. It says, thanks for the great information. Wondering how the dual enrollment credit fees are handled and if there's any impact on financial aid. What sort of process did the two institutions create to manage the difference between the two, the credit fees between the two institutions?
Yeah, I can talk.
I'm not sure. I guess that was for you guys, but it might also apply to Southern and Harper. So
yeah, I can briefly talk about Parkland Pathway. We have a consortium agreement, so that way the students, all the hours taken at Parkland and U of I can be factored into their financial aid, but their financial aid is awarded by Parkland, since that's their home institution. Something else I didn't mention, though, that's worth mentioning is I mentioned that the students can take a U of I class while in Pathway. That class, that the tuition they're paying for that class, it goes to the U of I, but the fee is the same tuition rate that they're paying to go to Parkland. So in a nutshell, it's a significant break on tuition for a U of I class. So they're still paying for it, but not as expensive as if they were a student there. And then I'll hand it over to Agnes and Sean.
Sure. I don't think we have too much to add to this. So our goal is that the students are completing their associate's degree before they're starting their program through the University Center. So it is kind of a clean break. We do have in our MOU, there is some language where a student can complete 45 credit hours at Harper, and then they can start at their partner institution. And then it really depends on if they got all those prerequisites completed. Honestly, in the year that I've been doing this, I haven't come across a student that is doing the dual enrollment piece. We really try and have our students complete that bachelor or that associate's degree before they do the bachelor's completion.
I'm going to say exactly. I totally agree.
awesome. Thank you. And there was another question in the chat that I want to go ahead and read from Tracy. It says, what intervention strategies do various community colleges implement to ensure a successful transfer transition experience for the student population that was identified as at risk? So, when we were talking earlier about basically the category that the national research focused on is Title IV, students Pell eligible and students who identify as first gen and underrepresented minority students, those that are most at risk of not making that jump to the next institution. So do the community colleges have intervention strategies that you can mention to help with that transition experience?
We've taken more of a approach. I mentioned the cohort advising. I do think that that's honestly really helped quite a bit, because that advisor knows the student situation. Really, they've just gotten to know them on a personal level. I would say also we try and just, this is really to all students, bite-sized pieces. So, not overwhelming them with information straight out of the gate. We even use this approach with recruitment to Parkland and getting students interested in maybe a career. And then we don't talk about like the academic stuff and the classes they'll have to take, but they find something that they think they could enjoy learning more about. Okay, so now you'll take a class or two, and kind of one thing will lead to the next. We find makes it a little less overwhelming. TRIO is a good example. They do a good job of getting students out to visits for four-year schools and talking about transfer. So those resources are definitely tapped into. And anytime a student wants to, if they're thinking about withdrawing from a class, even if it's just one class or multiple classes, there's a conversation that they would have with both financial aid and advising on the impact of that, not only for their time at Parkland, but downstream impacts if they transfer.
Thank you. Sean, you want to add anything real quick? I know we're right up on time here.
I'm not too familiar with some of our programs that we do offer. I do know we just became a Hispanic serving institution, and we have some grant money that we are utilizing for helping the students to transition from Harper to their next institution, especially if it is another HSI. They're trying to create some partnerships that way. That is very in infancy right now. We just became the HSI this year. So I do know that there is more efforts being put around those transfer experiences to help specific populations of students.
Wonderful. Thank you. So we're getting a lot of positive feedback in the chat. I encourage my co-presenters to go through and skim. There is one there. I know we're at time, but there is one specific to U of I. So it's from Amy, and she says, thank you, great presentation. I'm curious about the question on the Parkland application about the applicant's intent to transfer. Do most community colleges do that, or is that something unique to their partnership with the U of I? So I guess it's actually a Kristin question. Do you think other community college applications ask that?
When we came up with the idea, it was sort of like, let's pilot it and see how it works and what questions we get and how students are answering it, especially. I do feel like there were a couple other community colleges, and I don't know off the top of my head, that said they have the question, right, Holly, but they weren't maybe doing a lot with the data.
Exactly. Yeah. It seems like this is a question that many ask for their own, purposes for advising and admissions and program, alignment. But it was the missing component that we were discussing is getting it in the hands of the 4 years so that they could better work with the student sooner and prepare them. Yes. So I think that there are many community colleges already gathering this type of information, but kind of the next step for us was mostly the data sharing component.
Wonderful. And for anyone who does have to hop off, and if there's any more questions, we will stay and answer them. But I just wanted to call to your attention this last slide. The Illinois Academic and Career Success Network has a conference coming up at the end of February 25th, Building the Future We Want. So please, the great work the Success Network does, please come and share your information in 10 sessions, present maybe, all that kind of thing. I believe it's at the I Hotel. I know it's in Champaign this year. And there's more information available on the Success Network website about that conference.
Thank you, Dena. And I just want to thank all our speakers today. I really appreciated hearing about what you're working on, and especially the ways that you're working to shift the burden from students and onto the system.